You possessed everything. Empires, gold, armies. But every night, you returned to sleep under a canvas, with the wind whistling through the seams of your tent. You wake up wrapped in rough furs under the swaying shadow of your tent. The morning light filters through the felt seams, and the smoke from the brazier still hangs like a warm ghost. Outside, the wind sings in the eternal language of the steppes. There are no walls, no streets, only earth, sky, and movement. You stand up, your sword within reach, not for symbolism, but for necessity. Danger doesn't respect the dawn. Your mother boils sour milk in a blackened pot. Your father died winters ago. His body was left among frozen reeds, and there was no tomb, only the silence of the ice. Since you can remember, you learned that to stop is to die, that cities are traps disguised as security. Here, you don't build a house, you dismantle it. You don't worship an altar, you thank the wind. Your home is not a fixed place, but what you can pack on a mule. You are a child of the grass and the storm, and like them, you will move, because he who stays rots. You didn't learn from books. You learned from blood. You were riding before you learned to speak. At 5, you were already drawing a bow from the back of a pony. At 7, you hunted your first fox without help. Your teacher doesn't smile. He just nods. Because here, skill is not celebrated. It's demanded. They teach you to survive in motion, to kill without hesitation, to read the wind as others read the stars. The bow is your tongue, the spear your argument, the dagger your final word. There's no time for epics. Every mistake could be your last. Discipline comes not from fear of punishment, but from fear of death, because out there are rival clans, hungry wolves, and wars that don't ask for permission. No one will protect you, no one will avenge you. And while the sons of kings in the south learn to write poems, you learn to slit a throat quickly, to unhorse an enemy before he even sees you. The world is a lawless field, and you, barely a child, are already part of its brutal logic. Here, the strongest isn't honored. The one who survives the longest is followed. It wasn't what you expected. There was no glory, only hunger. The winter came earlier than expected. The goats died. The milk curdled in the skins. The shaman said the spirits demanded movement, but you knew the truth. If you didn't steal, you would die. That Chinese village had rice, it had fire, it had low walls, and men who didn't know how to ride. It was a decision, not a war, and you were there, with your bow drawn and your heart beating like a war drum. You jumped the palisade, you shot arrows, you heard screams in a strange language, women fleeing, children trapped. Your arrow didn't discriminate, neither did your stomach. When it was all over, you had a sack of rice in your saddlebags and a trembling slave girl on your arm. You didn't know what to do with her. No one had taught you that. That night by the fire, there was no celebration, only silence. You watched the rice being served while the girl couldn't stop crying, and you understood something no one had told you. Conquest is not a heroic song. It's an ugly, dirty necessity, and once it starts, it's hard to stop. You weren't born into a great clan, but you survived, and that was enough for the Khan of the Wolf Clan to notice you. You joined them not for honor, but because there was no other option. Your group was small, your horses weak. They were many, fast, ruthless. They moved like a pack. They hunted, slept, and died together. If you fell, they left you. If you won, you shared the loot. No eternal promises, just immediate utility. You earned your place with blood. In lightning-fast battles, you proved you were not just fast, but lethal. You didn't scream, you didn't boast. You killed and moved on. The Khan gave you men, then he gave you livestock, then he offered you plundered lands with mud houses and slaves to work them. You rejected them. "Why do I want a fixed place if tomorrow I'll be 100 leagues from here?" you said. He laughed, but he understood. You didn't want to own anything. You just wanted to keep riding. While others dreamed of building fortresses, you only sought open steppes. Your tent remained the same, small, old, portable, because it held everything you needed: warmth, silence, and a direction. The day you crossed the Yellow River, you stopped being a warrior of the steppes. You became a specter. That's where the sedentary empires began. Walled cities, infinite rice paddies, a bureaucracy that weighed more than steel. But you didn't look at them with admiration. You looked at them as prey. They attacked in formations, you with speed. They defended walls, you evaded them. Where they expected months of siege, you offered hours of destruction. Your riders swept in like a dry storm. They entered, took, burned, and disappeared before dawn. Every conquered city fed the clan, but you never stayed. They offered you statues, titles, concubines, thrones. You refused it all. While your lieutenants accumulated gold and silk, you lived as you always had, sleeping in your tent, cooking salted meat, listening to the wind instead of ministers, because you knew that any empire that can't be packed into a saddlebag is doomed to fall. And you hadn't come to found a kingdom, only to prove that none were safe. That night, as the loot gleamed by the fire, you walked away in silence, armed, awake, unable to sleep between the walls you yourself had set ablaze. You didn't conquer by force. You conquered by surprise. While emperors sent diplomats, you sent spies. Where they expected frontal charges, you feigned a retreat and led them straight into an ambush. The strategy wasn't noble, it was precise. Cities awaited a slow siege with camps and catapults, but you knew something they ignored. The plague travels fast. You poisoned wells, launched infected corpses over the walls. War was a science, and you were its cruelest alchemist. The wisest enemies surrendered before they saw you. The foolish resisted and learned too late. Each victory left less than the last. You no longer carried gold. You distributed it or burned it, not because you despised wealth, but because it slowed you down. The only things you still carried with you were the same as always: your bow, your knife, your tent, and the certainty that the world, at its core, was built on mud, and you instead rode upon the oldest truth, that nothing lasts. One windless morning, you saw him arrive, a lone rider in black scale armor with the Great Khan's banner on his spear. He didn't come to demand anything. He came to summon you. You had crossed rivers, sacked cities, crushed entire armies, and the echo of your deeds had reached Karakorum. You were not noble, nor an heir, but you had proven the only thing that matters on the steppes, that you knew how to win. The emissary dismounted, looked at you with respect, and handed you a message sealed with leather. The Khan wants to see you. There is a map you must know. You didn't hesitate. You gathered your men, burned your tent, and set off, because every Mongol knows that where there is a new plan, there must be new movements, and because if the Great Khan speaks, you listen. The empire's capital wasn't a city. It was a concentration of tents, smoking, alive, like a sleeping beast. There, among rival clans and aging generals, you entered the central camp, still covered in dust. The Khan didn't rise, he only pointed to the ground, a crude map without borders, a drawing made of rumors. To the west, something called Europe. "They will not come to us," he said. "We will go to them." They told you that in the west, there were cold, heavy kingdoms, where men worshipped a god nailed to wood, and where the horses were slow and the castles arrogant. Europe. The Khan didn't send you to conquer, but to explore. But you knew that every Mongol exploration ends with burning cities. You set out with 1,000 riders, all hardened, all loyal. They crossed deserts, mountain ranges, and civilizations that already trembled at the sound of their gallop. None knew what they would find, but they all knew what they were, a storm that cannot be reasoned with. They passed through Samarkand, crossed the Caucasus, heard languages that sounded like the panting of beasts. Where they could, they took water and salt. Where they couldn't, they stole it. Monks hid their idols, merchants closed their doors. The rumor of you arrived before your arrows, and you, every night, slept under a frayed canvas, with your bow at your side, and your gaze lost in the stars. There was no nostalgia, only a formless question. What lies at the end of the world? The answer wasn't on the maps. It was in the direction your horse was pointing. Europe smelled different. Of damp wood, of confined manure, of preyed-upon fear. Its cities were heavy, trapped in stone, castles like cages, churches like caverns. You didn't see greatness. You saw slowness, rigidity, and that gave you an advantage. You attacked monasteries at dawn, silence, then screams. The monks fled with books. Your men preferred grain and wine. The villages were clumsy, the soldiers proud, but slow. Their horses didn't know how to run. Their bows were toys. You shot from a full gallop without looking. They died without understanding. Prayers didn't stop your advance. The gods did not come down from the sky. The resistance was a whisper, the looting, a ritual. And while your officers divided the spoils, you ate in silence, without taking off your armor. You had traveled thousands of leagues to confirm what you already suspected. All empires are the same in the end. Walls, idols, supplicants. And you didn't come to kneel. You came to remind them that the land doesn't belong to who owns it, but to who can move across it without leaving a trace. In Poland, the snow spoke more than the men. It was a white, crushing silence. Your horses' hooves sank into the frozen mud. The bonfires didn't last long. Hunger began to gnaw harder than enemy knives. Your men didn't fear battle, but they feared the winter. The cities closed up like shells. There was no loot to justify the bone-splitting cold. Some began to wonder, what are we chasing? You had no answer. You had crossed the world, but in your heart, you still carried the emptiness of the steppe. That night, as you slept inside your tent, taut against the wind, you dreamed of your mother warming milk, of the creak of saddles before dawn, of the smell of horses under an open sky. And when you woke, you knew what you didn't want to admit. You had gone too far, not because you lacked strength, but because there was nothing left to conquer without losing yourself. The world could be defeated, but the ice taught you that even the conqueror has a limit when he no longer remembers why he began. You were not defeated. You retreated. No army pushed you back. No kingdom resisted you. Only the exhaustion of having seen too much, of having burned more than you could remember. And so you turned your horse to the east. The road back was longer than the one taken, not because of distance, but because of weight. Every landscape reminded you of something you left behind. A crumbled city, a fleeting face, a forgotten name. When you finally reached the steppes, Karakorum was no longer the same. The great Khan had died. His sons fought over the remains of the empire like hyenas at a feast. They offered you a position, asked you to take a side. You refused it all. You no longer wanted command, nor loot, nor glory. You wanted wind. So you rode to a lonely hill and pitched your tent there. No one followed you. You slept alone, ate alone, woke with the sun in your eyes and the past in your chest. You had crossed the world and found nothing more valuable than silence. You were never a king. You never wanted to be one. You didn't sleep in palaces. You didn't wear crowns. You never sat on a throne that couldn't be dismantled at dawn. Your glory was as ephemeral as a gallop. Your wealth, just enough to keep moving. The scribes of other lands called you a barbarian. The emperors cursed you from their towers, but they died, encased in stone. You, on the other hand, never stopped riding, never worshipped strange idols, never clung to flags, never put down roots. You were wind in the shape of a man, and the wind doesn't build empires, it passes through them. Your men still told tales of your deeds by the fire, but you knew it was all nothing more than dust. The only real thing was what you could carry with you. The bow, the knife, the tent, the story. And so you lived until your last breath, belonging to no one, owing nothing to the world you conquered. One morning your men found the tent empty. The leather hung still. The brazier was out. Your tracks erased by the night's blizzard. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, only absence. Your bow was still hanging, your sword sheathed. No one dared to touch anything. They searched for you for days, riding in circles over the hills, but they knew deep down you would not be found, because those who never stay do not die in a fixed place either. There was no tomb, no ceremony, only the rumor that you had merged with the steppe, that the wind had claimed you as its own. Years later, the empires you conquered rose again. Rebuilt cities forgot your name. But in every tent raised at dawn, in every horse that sets off into the unknown, someone still remembers your story. Because conquering the world is a feat, but living without keeping any of it, that is only done by those who understand freedom. Yeah,